Hey, what's up guys? My name is Mona and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to talk about a miner been getting a ton of questions on recently just because of the recent coverage of this thing. So we're going to give our thoughts on it. We're going to be talking about that matches, Anybox, Initverse, ASIC miner. Okay, so not necessarily new. It's one we've mentioned before, but we're going to go a little bit in depth just because there is more info. People are now getting this thing in hand, although there's a lot of sketchy details. We're going to talk about everything, and we'll kind of go through the research we're doing when we're looking at new coins, new ASIC miners, just to kind of see what we could find and kind of give our overall thoughts on it. Okay, if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. So this is one that wasn't just announced. It's been announced for quite a while now. I don't know if it's just that people are now getting them in hand. Like it's one that don't necessarily care a whole lot about after just quickly looking back at that time. We'll kind of quickly look at things again. But one of the primary reasons this thing has been getting attention is the profitability. Okay, so it's again another little box miner. This is from a yet to be known manufacturer. Apparently, initially people were saying it was Matches. On ASIC miner value, they have as the manufacturer being Pinecone. So Pinecone matches Anybox. Tried doing a little research on them, couldn't really find anything. So for me, automatically, it's an unknown manufacturer. So there are going to be extremely high risk there. Okay, just based on that fact alone. The fact that it's making 20 bucks a day, that's what's getting people's attention, especially because of the price point. $3,000, it's a low wattage little box miner. For those of us who have been here a while, already probably a lot of red flags going off, and rightfully so. Okay, so again, making about 20 bucks a day, will that last forever? Most likely not. Okay, so there's actually a lot of thoughts going on here, but just understand the main thing here, a ton of risk. Okay, things can plummet, things can also moon, ton of risk either way. Let's talk about what we find though. Okay, so as we go down, overall price of this thing, they have it at $29.70. That is about the price range that it's at. If we look at ASL miner, they have it in that range, so price wise we know it's there. As we dig in a little bit more, like we mentioned, it's not something that was just recently announced. Kind of digging through like older articles. There was an article from them on CPU mining on this Reddit board about 6 months ago talking about it, the specific manufacturer, the specific unit. So it's hard to say. If any of you guys know, let us know in the comments if it's just now actually being released or if it's been in hand and people are just promoting it now, right? To me, it seems like they're just promoting it now, maybe because sales are dwindling or whatever's happening, but that seems to be more the case. As we do a little research on the coin, because to me, at least for what I look for specifically, is if I'm going to be mining this thing, if I'm going to be mining it long term, potentially holding a long term, I want to see that there's value in the actual coin itself, in the project itself. So yes, a lot of people look to hardware reviews and they look at all this. For me, the first step is looking at, is it even worth getting to that step, right? So looking at the tokenomics of the coin, looking at the project itself, looking at the manufacturer itself. Is this something that's likely to last? Based on what we know from the manufacturer, we have no idea, right? So automatically that's already putting it in the sketchy range. So now as we look at the token, kind of funny that it's pumping so hard pretty recently right now when they're starting to promote it, right? So again, I'm not a person who believes in coincidences. We can see the rise here starting the beginning of November and it's just been rising, right? So a good sign in a sense there. To me though, kind of more red flags. It's kind of funny that's coinciding with it. As we look at some of the tokenomics, current market cap 76 million. So kind of people tend to see that and they're like, okay, a lot of room for potential upside, etc., etc. As we look at the price action kind of going farther back, we can see the early signs in July 2025. And again, it's been kind of going down until recently, which again, they're doing this promotional kick. So are they hyping it up just to sell more miners? It's hard to say there. As we look further down, and this is kind of something you want to focus more on, right? Especially with something that hasn't been out in circulation very long, is looking at the FDV. That's typically kind of a metric to kind of give you an idea. Is the project as a whole worth that amount? If all coins were currently in circulation and the FDV is about $770 million. Okay, the other thing we want to focus at is how many coins are circulating versus the max supply. Okay, because this is something where it makes it easy to inflate the coin price if there's not that many coins in circulation. Which in this case, if we look at it, the current circulating supply is right under 600 million with a total supply of 6 billion. Okay, so not even 10% of the coins are out in circulation. Okay, so that is kind of something to factor in here. Because as we've seen it, if coins tend to dump at a future point, that can drastically affect things, right? So there's different trains of thought though, right? It's going to depend on the emissions. Are there any unlocks, anything of that sort? And kind of digging a little bit deeper, it looks like there isn't, but there's something a little bit weird going on there, okay? But that is something to be wary of. Again, not that many coins in circulation in comparison to the total supply. So just be wary of that there. As we dig a little bit deeper, they are listed on CMC also. How far do they go back here? About the same, right? Beginning of July 2025. And as we look at what exchanges they're on currently, MEXC, which is one of the bigger ones. Again, that is typically one of the first bigger ones a lot of these coins to get on. XT.com is a small one, Hotcoin, and CoinStore. So only 4 exchanges. Okay, so as we do a little bit more research on any, we go through their X account, and where it's a little bit iffy also, right? So look at the amount of followers, right? 154,000. But then when you look at the engagement of the tweets, it's not looking too hot, right? Kind of really doesn't add up, meaning what? A lot of it's probably bots, right? Or a previously purchased account, whatever it may be. Again, you could dig deeper into it. I've seen enough to kind of like look at things. For example, their pin post has about 12 comments. This post has 160, mainly because this is a little competition. Let's look at some of the tweets. Again, it's all just predictions, so that's why it's engagement farming. But as we look down a lot of the others, again, like this tweet, for example, 0 comments, 1.2 thousand views, 8 hearts, 1 repost. Does that kind of make sense for an account with that many? Probably not. Let's continue on. So one thing to note, and this is kind of one of their things that they pinned up here, is that they had this big investment. So this is where it's a little bit weird, right? So major update, Initverse has completed its first round of 500 BTC financing, about $50 million. The strategic investment from Tabula Rasa Foundation has officially landed. So try to do a little bit of digging into the name of this foundation. Couldn't find anything, right? Which is a little bit weird. The few things I did find, going a little bit more in depth into some of their promo materials or their little things, was that it's a newly founded, smaller crypto firm. Even then, you usually still find more information about it. Couldn't really find a whole lot. That is a pretty large investment into such a small coin, right? Especially considering when we look at some of the other investments from big players that we do know of into somewhat more well-rounded coins. So that is something that's a little bit weird. Also, the fact that typically, what are these investments, right? They're typically buying tokens at a reduced rate. They have things set aside. They have whatever they're going to do for them. In this case, supposedly going through their white paper, though, that's not how their emissions are set up, right? So apparently it's looking like it's a fair launch. Whether or not I believe it or not, it's a different story. So the INI token is a native token of Initverse and can also be regarded as an ecosystem token or governance token. The total supply of INI tokens is capped at 6 billion, with all tokens generated through block production to incentivize participants and maintain network security. Okay, so it's saying all tokens generated through block production. Okay, meaning there is no pre-mine, supposedly. There is no token set aside. Apparently, this is all the emissions for it. Okay, and down here, they do have a little community fund that they are mining to, supposedly. Although there is no pre-mining or reserve tokens for the community, the official team retains a mining address to support community development. All tokens mined through this address will be fully allocated for community building and airdrops. All right, so I guess, right? So again, more to see on this. We'll see. Maybe they'll make a bigger release or something. I don't know. Just something to look at. Let's continue down though. Looking down, this is their link tree. As we go down and click some of their older things, the store gets extremely sketchy, right? So Apparently they did have NFT things at some point. Again, this could have been a promotional thing. I'm not sure. I see things like this, though. That's definitely a turnoff as we go down on their official site, which, again, doesn't even give a whole lot of credence nowadays, just because with the development of AI and how easy it is to spin up a good website, it's not even something I'd factor in anymore, right? In the past, let's say 3, 4, 5 years ago, that's something we would look at, like, okay, well, is it a piece of crap website? Is it whatever? Is it a professional? It's so easy to spin up a site now, that's kind of almost an irrelevant point. As we click through some more of their things, they did do cloud mining, I guess, back in the day also, which again is also extremely red flaggish. You can see the packages here. They had up to like almost $5,600 packages for cloud mining, which again, for me, immediately, not even having to dig super deep, it was another big turnoff. Again, this is probably something that's outdated because we went through the platform, there were 0 active. So maybe it's something they moved on now with because of the ASIC, but again, when I see things like that, it's definitely a turnoff. This is the Yates pool, which is apparently the only pool for this thing, and they've been around for quite a while now, right? So again, that's another kind of turn off, it being so centralized. In regards to the cloud mining thing, and this is where it makes it even more sketchy, is we're going through the FAQs. Again, we're digging pretty deep through everything, trying to see what we could find. When a lot of these things are based off of commission, right? So the Ponzi-nomics come into play, even more of a turnoff for this thing. Again, to each their own, but when I see things like that, it's not too great, especially when there's such a big portion of the FAQ dedicated to the commission portion. That is also a little strange. And especially when you can see the targets and the price points of their commissions based off of this. So you can look at it here. So why don't I have a commission? Sales reps are directly managed and appointed by regional directors. They must meet a minimum performance threshold of $10,000 to qualify for commissions, right? So again, extremely almost weird when such a big portion of the FAQ is based off of that. And the fact that that's like the minimum threshold for such a small market cap coin, like it's just, again, a lot of red flags here. Okay, so to each their own. Again, these are just things when I look at it, turn off, right? On top of it being a coin that I don't necessarily see it doing initially well. It's not a coin I'm too bullish on, not a coin that's on my radar at all. Again, if it's something you're into, though, if you look at what they're at, maybe you see value there. I personally don't. So, again, for me personally, just even more kind of turnoffs. All right, let's continue down. Again, you can see their website. It looks all right. But again, reading their statement, what they're supposed to do, not something I'm particularly bullish on. Let's keep going down. And this is where we can find the algorithm of this ASIC. So it's called VersaHash, and it's one specific for this coin. Current block reward is down to 218.9 INI. They do charge a block reward fee of 10%, which is kind of hefty. Which is kind of weird. Is that, I don't know if that's the pool fee or what that is exactly, but that is a little strange considering that they're saying that they don't hold any of those things. So I'm assuming that's the pool fee, I'm guessing. So the emission is 241,000. Volume is decent. So when we look at the total hash rate, right, which we can find here, and it's been jumping pretty significantly. Actually, just looked at it a minute ago. It was like 6.7, I believe. Now it's down to 5.78, which again, things kind of fluctuate in those regards. The main reason we're looking there is we can kind of ballpark how many units are on the network. Okay, so based off the numbers I had earlier, a second ago, it was actually at 6.7. Okay, so 6.7T, again, you can use a little hash rate converter, just makes it easier. If you plug in the 6.79 terahash, again, it did just go down to 5.6, but again, at the time I was doing it, it was at that amount. 6.79 terahash is going to give you the amount of mega hash. So now that you have your mega hash, you can divide it by the mega hash of the unit, or the hash rate that it's rated in of the unit, which in this case is 850 mega hash. So when we take that amount divided by the 850 mega hash, this is approximately how many units are on the network if it's all any boxes, which so far it seems it is, right? Apparently it was CPU mineable previously, but this thing is so much more efficient. Probably not seeing any of those. It's probably the majority of these. And that's a surprisingly pretty high number. Okay, meaning that there's at least the equivalent of about 8,000 of these things. Okay, so to me, definitely that's confirming that it's not just released now, right? This thing probably has been out in the wild since it was announced. It was announced about 6 months ago. Again, this wasn't a brand new thing. It's hard to say how long it's been out in the wild, but the fact that there's 8,000 units kind of says that it's been out a while. So this is where it gets extremely confusing, though, because if the hardware just released, then they're definitely pre-mining pretty hard, or they definitely have larger units in-house. Okay, so looking at all that, right, looking at the grand scheme of things, so is this something I'm personally interested in? No, right? So a couple quick reasons, right? Number one, the fact that altcoin prices are so low, just in general, even aside from this thing, is just extremely appealing to just buy the coin at this point, right? Because of that. Number two, even if you are interested in purchasing this ASIC, a lot of other ASICs currently, because of the price of those altcoins, are at near all-time lows. Okay, so for not a whole lot more, you can get an L9, you can get a top-of-the-line Bitcoin ASIC, you can get something else that long-term wise will have you more established, right? So it depends on your goals here. So who would this be for? It'd be 100% a big degen play. Okay, so this is something where you are degenning on the fact that you're going to get this thing. There is some viability, right? So the main thing we'll talk about, which are typically downfalls, is the centralization of this thing. Okay, so this thing isn't very popular, right? It does seem like this manufacturer is probably closely tied to Initverse itself, right? Is it a direct partnership? We don't know, but to me, it's pretty probable that this might be the only manufacturer for this algorithm. Okay, so in that sense, that manufacturer can then kind of control the hash rate essentially, because they're only going to reach X amount of units, right? So in theory, it could kind of be a good thing. The thing is, though, we don't have that crystal ball. We just don't know how many units they're going to produce of this thing. Is this something where they're only going to produce 500 units a month and it's just going to sell whatever it sells? I mean, at this point, they've already made 8,000 of these things, so they are on a larger scale. It's hard to say because, again, that's typically one of the bigger risks with these small ASICs of a new coin is your yield going down dramatically because of the hash rate mooning. Okay, so for example, if another manufacturer comes in and it's 10 times as powerful, then the hash rate goes up 10x, your yield goes down at that same extent, right? So now you're making a tenth of what you were previously. That's typically a big risk, and typically that's one of your biggest risks, period, right? So here could potentially be mitigated a bit if no other manufacturer comes in, if it's only them, and typically they're only churning out maybe a couple hundred units a month or something, right? And that's kind of one of the big risks here, and that's typically what you're kind of betting on in a sense. Okay, it'd be one thing if they did give us an amount like, hey, we have an exclusive partnership with this blockchain, we're the only manufacturer, we're only going to produce 500 units a month. Then at that point, it's like, okay, you can potentially do a 12-month thing. That's not the case here, though, right? So again, extreme risk on that part. Another big thing is like price action. Okay, so the profitability is also because the coin has pumped pretty significantly during this past amount. Again, back in early November, it was at 3 cents. It's currently at 13 cents. Okay, so it's done a 4x just recently. Again, very funny timing, especially when we look at previously. It had done nothing, nothing, nothing. Again, no real reason for this. Again, I don't believe in coincidences. Just factor that in. Maybe it's to sell these things and then it dumps. Who knows? Or maybe they continue to pump this thing further to the moon, just making this thing even more appealing, right? So that to me is another thing. Again, if you're bullish on the coin, then go for it. It's not one I'd personally be bullish on at all whatsoever. So is there potential for it to do well? Sure, right? Is there a lot of other things I'd rather invest $3,000 into that could potentially do extremely well also? extremely sure, right? And that's kind of my biggest thing right now, right? If this is in the bull market, alts were all hot and those ASICs are all extremely priced anyway, then I'd be more likely to degen into something like this. At that point, from the degen perspective, it'd be a bit more appealing. But currently, with alts being so low, in some cases all-time low, bear market lows, other ASICs being in the same predicament, those things are just much more appealing. But again, just understand extreme risk here. Anything can happen. This thing can retrace back to where it was. Obviously, your profitability is going to change pretty drastically if that is the case. So definitely up to you kind of thing, right? But for me, definitely 100% a no-go. You got to look and do what makes most sense to you. Do you want to degen? For me, is just too many red flags. Not something I'd be interested in mining long term. Is there feasibility here? Sure, right? If you get this thing and they're only making a few 100 units a month and the hash rate isn't going through the roof, then if it continues at this price point, continues to escalate, then sure. But do I see that happening? Probably not, right? Unless the market really starts to flip, then anything can happen. But let me know in the comments, guys. What do you guys think? Are you into this thing? Did you purchase one? Be super careful, right? But let me know in the comments. Hopefully not, but to each your own. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'm out.